thanks
Hi.
very much for joining us today for this. This is the second in our series of Made in Colwyn Bay
Yeah.
interviews with local artists and performers.
Yeah.
Can you start by just saying a bit about yourself and tell us a bit about the sort of creative work that you do?
Yeah. I'm an illustrator and animator. I'm an educator as well. I'm a trained teacher, and I do lots of education work. But I trained at Manchester and then Brighton, and and I do a lot of drawing, quite sort of hand drawn, cut out animation and illustration. A lot of it's kind of anecdotal, so stuff that's happened to me that I think is funny or interesting, and then a lot of it is kind of a bit more sort of dreamy, I suppose, like kind of, yeah, so it's kind of like the two mixed together, so kind of everyday stuff and sort of dreamy stuff, I think.
It's a very kind of specific style. It's quite pastel shaded. It's quite uplifting, I think. Is that, have you been inspired to a certain style, or has it just emerged over the time?
I think it's just emerged, but I think like when you're an artist or you make things, you're always inspired by other things that you see. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm inspired by a lot of quite classical illustrators, like I don't know if you know people like Angela Barrett and Michael Foreman, and they're kind of they're quite like long established illustrators that I kind of grew up looking at when I was little. But then things like, I don't know, some of the things I'm inspired by, I don't even know what the names of them are. But then stuff like I really like, I don't know, like I used to really love pre-Raphaelite paintings and things like that. So I kind of like things that look, I quite like real life things, but I also like the kind of, you know, the fantastical element of things as well. And I love colour and stuff, and yeah.
So who do you see as your audience? Do you have that in mind when you're producing your work?
Not always. Sometimes I do, but not really. I studied illustration and animation, and I thought I might sort of fall into like a children's illustration bracket, but I've never really fallen into that bracket with my work. I think it's somewhere, I don't really know, to be honest. So when I, like, a lot of my work like over the past couple of years was inspired by my little boy, and that just kind of like naturally targeted parents. So, you know, like I was doing lots of drawings about him and like the stuff that he was doing every day, and without even really thinking about it, that was kind of like appealing to people who have got kids or know small children. So that was quite accidental. But then, like, you know, the work I was doing before that, when I was doing my MA and stuff, I was kind of writing short stories and illustrating them or making animations to go with them, but they weren't really targeted at children. It was more sort of, I guess, people my age. I think a lot of the time, I know I don't know if it sounds really like, a lot of the time I'm just making work that I want to make, sort of thing. So maybe it's targeted at me. So maybe it's just targeted at people because it's like my way of getting something out of my head, sort of thing. So yeah.
I think it certainly resonates with other people. And I think it might be that as you mature and as your work develops, people follow along with you, kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. That would be nice, but yeah.
So I want to move on to talk a little bit about lockdown, and I believe you've been doing some animation workshops in lockdown. Is that right?
Yeah. So trying to. I've been doing some work for Tape and the Imagine Colwyn Bay project.
Yeah.
Basically, so the idea was to do a lot of things on Zoom, but it's kind of, we're still kind of navigating that a little bit. But some things have been working on Zoom, but I've been running art clubs, so and within art club for Tape, I've been doing work for the Imagine Colwyn Bay project. So it's been mainly Facebook Live sessions. So I've just been like running a session that people can watch if they want to, and it's all kind of up there online. And it explains a bit about the Imagine project, and then I've worked through a couple of different projects within that sort of thing.
This year's been a really difficult time for everybody, and you've been doing different kinds of work via Zoom and so on in lockdown. Has lockdown affected the way that you create?
Yes and no. I suppose I think what's been quite interesting about lockdown is that it's been really difficult for everyone in loads of different ways. Like it's affected everyone I know completely differently. But I think when you're a creative person, or if you're a freelancer, or illustrator, animator, that sort of thing, I think the way that I tend to work is kind of similar to the way that I would have worked in lockdown anyway. Like if I'm making work at home, I do spend quite a lot of time on my own and sort of, and I do kind of get my head down a little bit and get quite involved in what I'm doing. So I think really I'm quite lucky in that way. But yeah, it's definitely changed in terms of communication. So a lot of the things that I've been doing have been happening because of lockdown. So for example, I made a couple of how to animate videos for Mostin, and that was all because of lockdown that I was doing that work. Yes. And then it's funny really, it's kind of different and not different, if that makes sense.
Do you think when lockdown is eased that you'll take something from it? Will you just go back to the way you worked before, or will you draw on some of the experiences of lockdown?
Yeah, I think whatever happens to me anyway in life, it kind of filters through into my work a little bit. So I think when lockdown is eventually over and we can kind of go back to normality, I think it will definitely influence my work a lot more, and I'll definitely appreciate it a lot more. I don't know, it's quite, I wonder if I'll be more productive outside of lockdown or less productive, because I thought like the dream for a lot of people is to sort of have like endless time to create stuff, but because there's been no sort of end in sight with lockdown, and because it's gone on for so long and it's been so uncertain, that's actually quite counterproductive to a lot of creative people.
I was looking at some of your work yesterday, and there was a particular image that jumped out at me, and it was a family. It was a drawing of a family standing outside Colwyn Bay railway station. And I think a lot of people will look at that and it will immediately place them in the town, in that space, on a day trip with a family and so on. And how much are you connected, do you think, to Colwyn Bay, and how much does that mean to you?
I think I have a sort of I've developed more of a connection to it since because I've been here for a lot of my life, but I've been away from it a lot of my life as well, sort of thing. So and I came back here because I had my little boy, and it was sort of to be with family and stuff. And I think I have a lot of I do have quite a fondness for it. That image particularly was that specific image was for Imagine Colwyn Bay. So that's for an animation about I don't know if you know the story about the mechanical elephant that used to be on.
I know of it, yeah.
Yeah, so that we did a little animation about that.
Okay. Yeah.
And those were the characters that I sort of developed for that story. Okay. Yeah, and I do have a lot of sort of like I love being by the seaside and stuff, and it is quite sort of. I remember when I used to come back from uni on the train, or from London when I was living in London, like if I used to travel back, I used to get quite a sort of like a bit of nostalgic feeling when I'd be travelling back, and it's.
So what do you think of the arts and the creative scene in Colwyn Bay?
I think it's quite overlooked. I think it's quite hidden, but I think it's definitely there. I work for Mostin Gallery as well, and I think a lot of people. I'm always surprised at how when I talk to people about Mostin, like they don't know it's there, or and through that I know quite a lot of artists in the area, so I know that there are a lot of artists around here, but there isn't like a kind of, I guess we were talking a bit about this before, I suppose, but yeah, I guess there isn't really a hub so much for the arts here, but I know that it exists, sort of thing. There is stuff going on, it's just you have to search for it, and lockdown's made that even harder really, because you can't kind of connect with people in the same way as you could before.
Perhaps when we're out of lockdown, we can have a big party with a big celebration of an exhibition, and get all the creatives together, perhaps.
Yeah, a big arty party. Yeah.
Elly, where can we find your work?
So I have a website, and I also use Instagram quite a lot. So that's where I put most of my most recent work. And I also have an Etsy shop where I sell a lot of different things.
Excellent, that's great. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Elly. It's been great to talk to you and to learn a bit more about what you do.
Oh, thank you very much for asking me. It's been a pleasure. It's really nice to meet you. So yeah. Thank you.